Board of Water Supply, keeping Oahu refreshed for 90 years. You don't have to go to extremes to save water. For easy water-saving tips, visit boardofwatersupply.com.
Meet the Lee family. The Lee family enjoys living in Hawaii. June to November is hurricane season in Hawaii. In times like this, it's easy to panic. The Lee family is smart. They don't panic. They are prepared. They know you can use household containers to safely store tap water for up to 30 days. You need to be prepared for at least 14 days. You will need 1 gallon per day per person, and you need to disinfect the water with 1 drop of household bleach per gallon. Hurricanes can be scary, but there is no need to panic. You can enjoy Hawaii lifestyle with just a few tips on how to be prepared. Tap water is safe to drink. And let's not forget, avoiding store-bottled water saves our beautiful planet.
Our mission at the Honolulu Board of Water Supply is to provide Oahu with safe, dependable, and affordable water now and into the future. A big part of what we do is educating the community about the importance of saving water through our annual Water Conservation Week poster and poetry contests. Each year, the students are great at answering the call. Our judges are always impressed with the thousands of vivid pieces of artwork as well as poems that demonstrate why saving water is important and why our water resources are precious to them. Education is a cornerstone of our outreach program, whether it's checking for leaks or water conservation in general. BWS takes time to be a part of the community and talking to people one-on-one. Preserving our water resource is everyone's kuleana. We offer outreach programs for the keiki all the way up to the kupuna. Our employees work together to come up with creative activities that demonstrate what the BWS does each and every day to pump millions of gallons of water and deliver it to where it is needed. These hands-on activities highlight how preserving our water resource is everyone's kuleana. Begin your journey to water conservation by joining the Board of Water Supply. BWS has career opportunities in customer care, information technology, field operations, and for civil, electrical, and mechanical engineers. To find current job openings, go to bwsjobs.com.
For water-saving tips, visit boardofwatersupply.com.
Every drop of water is part of a journey. It begins as water vapor that falls to earth as rain. For the next 25 years, it's filtered through volcanic rock. At last, it arrives at its final destination. Really? Can somebody come fix this?
When it comes to water, don't waste a drop. Board of Water Supply, keeping Oahu refreshed for 90 years. You don't have to go to extremes to save water. For easy water-saving tips, visit boardofwatersupply.com.
Meet the Lee family. The Lee family enjoys living in Hawaii. June to November is hurricane season in Hawaii. In times like this, it's easy to panic. The Lee family is smart. They don't panic. They are prepared. They know you can use household containers to safely store tap water for up to 30 days. You need to be prepared for at least 14 days. You will need 1 gallon per day per person, and you need to disinfect the water with 1 drop of household bleach per gallon. Hurricanes can be scary, but there is no need to panic. You can enjoy Hawaii lifestyle with just a few tips on how to be prepared. Tap water is safe to drink. And let's not forget, avoiding store-bottled water saves our beautiful planet.
Our mission at the Honolulu Board of Water Supply is to provide Oahu with safe, dependable, and affordable water now and into the future. A big part of what we do is educating the community about the importance of saving water through our annual Water Conservation Week poster and poetry contests. Each year, the students are great at answering the call. Our judges are always impressed with the thousands of vivid pieces of artwork as well as poems that demonstrate why saving water is important and why our water resources are precious to them. Education is a cornerstone of our outreach program, whether it's checking for leaks or water conservation in general. BWS takes time to be a part of the community and talking to people one-on-one. Preserving our water resource is everyone's kuleana. We offer outreach programs for the keiki all the way up to the kupuna. Our employees work together to come up with creative activities that demonstrate what the BWS does each and every day to pump millions of gallons of water and deliver it to where it is needed. These hands-on activities highlight how preserving our water resource is everyone's kuleana. Begin your journey to water conservation by joining the Board of Water Supply. BWS has career opportunities in customer care, information technology, field operations, and for civil, electrical, and mechanical engineers. To find current job openings, go to bwsjobs.com.
For water-saving tips, visit boardofwatersupply.com.
Every drop of water is part of a journey. It begins as water vapor that falls to earth as rain. For the next 25 years, it's filtered through volcanic rock. At last, it arrives at its final destination. Really? Can somebody come fix this?
When it comes to water, don't waste a drop.
just to get in. A couple of them actually are known. The other day with the first time I saw a little bit of hands in the ear. Finger with somebody. A couple of you hear me? Oh, you can? She can't. Oh, okay. I can. Couple, try turning up your volume a little bit if you can. Yeah, your volume. Non-perishable. Fucking beans. I think my volume is. No, fucking beans anyway. The question then is, do they have that over in Kuwait?
So I have to say, last week, I was able to get 12 rolls of bamboo, no paper toilet paper for $16, and I was grateful.
Playing TV for God.
So Costco's out, most of the stores are out, almost everything's out over here too.
Oh boy.
Hey Kapua, just a heads up, I'm gonna have to ask you who else is in the room with you, just for the record.
But nobody, I'm by myself.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna, just heads up, I'm gonna ask you after I talk to her.
Okay.
Frank, can you hear us?
I can hear you perfectly, yeah.
It looks like Frank might be connected,
But no video.
but no video.
I heard Kay sign in earlier, but no video. Yeah, Kay's here. Yeah, thank you.
Oh.
Okay, is that you?
Okay, you're gonna be here? Moana, are you on the line? Kay, we didn't know that you were not coming to the meeting, personally. So I don't think our notices go well. Moana? Yeah. Okay, this is the situation. Kay Matsui is called in by telephone. She was not noticed, public notice as being from a remote location, and we did not put her address on that remote location.
That's okay. You guys can proceed just because of the emergency proclamation and the suspension of sun time off.
Oh, okay.
So that's fine. You just have to confirm, Brian, whether or not she's in a room with anyone.
Okay,
Okay.
Thanks,
Juana, do we need to get her location for the record?
I mean, that would be a good idea. If that's okay. I think that would be smart.
Okay, so Kay. Go ahead, Kay.
About my location, I couldn't get on the web.
Oh, okay, if you can, then we can record that in the minutes.
Sure, I'm doing it right now, thank you.
Thank you, and Kay, is there? Go ahead.
And Kay, this is Kapua. It took me a couple of tries to get on the Webex, and so you might want to just try again, because once the thing was light and open, it was a lot easier. Oh, I see, okay, I tried last time for 40 minutes, I couldn't get on, so I just continue to. I just tried again. Okay, thank you.
Actually, the only person that is Jade.
we'll wait a few minutes to call to her,
Yeah.
so that gives Kay some time to.
Jade's probably a pretty busy guy right now. Yeah. Poor Jade.
Ernie, you want to sit over here? You can sit here now.
Oh, okay.
Good idea.
I was actually enjoying to be on the side.
No. We have to be in the lineup to go to the camera. You gotta be in the line of the camera too.
Okay.
You folks, Jade just joined.
Jade?
Jade, are you
Email
there?
was in person. Okay.
Jade, are you on the line? Oh, okay. Okay, Jade, can you email Dee Dee on the address of your location where you're calling from for the record? And then Brian is going to ask you during the meeting if you have anybody else in the room with you for the record.
Yeah, I'm gonna
social distancing. Yeah?
As long as you're not in the law.
Okay. All righty. I guess we're starting the process to go remote meetings from now.
Sooner than I expected.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
Do we need an exact address, Moana?
If you wouldn't mind, that would be nice.
Well, what's your exact address of your neighbor's house that you're in?
Actually, I need to go look. I don't know his street address.
Now we have to wait till she gets back.
This is actually a little harder than I thought.
It is coordination.
I think once we get adjusted,
Yeah.
we take care of this stuff.
Okay, just gotta add Kapua's. Is it Pier 2?
Pier 2.
Do I have to, Moana, do I have to announce the locations on the record?
No, you do not.
Okay, we'll just note it.
Because that could be.
Just put it in the minute. But Brian, if you could just say how this is all being done remotely for the record, that would be good.
I will.
Like how it's being streamed or how the public's going to participate.
I will, definitely.
Thank you.
So for the record, the number outside the house is 3039 Kaohe Road, Kaohe, Kalihi 96754.
All right, you get started? Okay, we're gonna get started. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to everyone here. We are, this is the March 23rd, 2020 regular meeting of the Board of Water Supply. I do want to note for the record, we are practicing social distancing. There are a total of 6 of us here in the room present. Welcome to those of you who are participating in various remote and virtual forms. I do want to note for the record, we do have 3 board members who are participating remotely. First, we have Vice Chair Sproat. Good afternoon. And Kapua, if you don't mind, is there anyone in the room with you present for the record?
No, for the record, I am completely alone.
Okay, so Kapua is alone. Board Member Matsui, can you hear us?
Actually, she just left the meeting, and that's what I'm showing on my, she was having a hard time coming through. Maybe she'll try to call back.
Okay, Board Member Butai, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, and is there anyone in the room with you?
No.
Okay, Board Member Butai, I'm no one in the room. And Board Member Matsui, are you back on? Okay, well, when she gets back on, if someone could let me know, we'll put it on the record. I do want to note that this meeting is available virtual and remotely. As you know, we have the 3 board members who are joining us remotely via Webex. We do have also right now live streaming via Facebook Live. We have Corp Counsel calling in through our phone system. Later on in this meeting, as the agenda items occur, we also will have through Webex other participants. We also will have public call-in, and also public participation potentially with people appearing physically here at this address. If I could ask the people who are participating by WebEx to please mute
Your
your phone, your microphone, and unmute it only when you're speaking, it would really help us here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Board Member Matsui, are you back on the line? All right,
Yeah.
We are going to proceed. And again, if those of you who are participating remotely, if you could mute your phones, we're getting a lot of feedback here live.
We'll try to, Chair, we'll try to see if we can control. Yeah.
Okay. We will, I do want to take this opportunity before I start going down the items. I do want to thank the Board of Water Supply IT department, to Paul, also Didi and
Nolan.
Nolan. For the record, thank you very much for setting this up. It allows us to conduct vital business while practicing social distancing and allowing the public and everyone to participate remotely. All right, the first item requiring board action today is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on February 24th, 2020. They have been distributed in your packets, and I would like to entertain a motion to approve.
So, second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded for approval. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. All right, the minutes are approved. All right, moving on to the items for information. The first item we have today for board discussion is regarding the COVID-19 concerns for future public meetings to receive testimony on haiku stairs. Chair recognizes Mr. Manager Lau.
Thank you, Chair and members. I need a presentation. Yeah, what we wanted to do to just give you an update on haiku stairs, the final EIS. The final EIS was posted on the OEQC website, I think around January 23rd. So just so happens it'll be either today or tomorrow will be the end of the 60-day challenge period. To date, unless something comes in today or tomorrow, we haven't received any, been served with any lawsuit or legal complaint contesting the final EIS for haiku stairs. That being said, if we get through the 60-day challenge period, then in the future, the board, our recommendation is that the board solicit input, testimony from the public, and then if the board so chooses, then maybe after that, make a decision at an open public meeting, perhaps a regular meeting of the Board of Water Supply. But in the meantime, since the publishing of the final EIS for Haiku Stairs, the coronavirus pandemic is upon us now. And that's causing us to reevaluate how we interact as a community. And a recent mayor's order, as recent as yesterday, that was issued yesterday, is really restricting our ability to encourage public gatherings of maybe more than 10 people. That being said, we'd just like to have a short discussion about how we can proceed possibly forward on this and what are some of the options leveraging technology and different approaches to allow for public input without physically having to gather as a large group in one location. Because we also want to support the mayor and the governor in preventing the spread of COVID-19 or the coronavirus to help flatten the curve. So do everything we can, practicing social distancing to help reduce the impact on our healthcare facilities from the spread of this virus. So we looked at two options. This first option is actually the option that we're kind of using today for this board meeting. We have some members of the board participating via Webex, but also we're using Facebook Live right now. There are two cameras in the room that are doing live streaming via Facebook to allow the community members to view the meeting, and that they're doing that live. We're also opening up testimony for the public to come in for today, either in person with a limitation of 10 people in this room, the boardroom, maximum 10 people. So if you can see in some of the Facebook Live cameras that we only have actually 3 chairs in the room, and we used to have a lot more before. So this unfortunately is a new norm because of the pandemic. The other thing we're allowing is for people to call in, and we have a conference phone number set up for people to dial in to provide testimony. What is the phone number that they can call in?
It's 748.
6040.
748-6040. 748-6460.
Can you turn the microphone on underneath your podium there? So sorry. Oh, on the base speaker, there you go. Thank you, so sorry.
It was actually on.
Oh, it was?
The light was on. Yeah. The number to call in is 748-6040. Sorry about that. So there are different ways for people to participate in this meeting. So this is the first option, which actually it provides for public remote viewing of the meeting. The public can call in to provide testimony to us. And for today, there's limited in-person testimony that can be provided, limited to maximum maybe 3 public persons in the room with us at any time. However, in the future, maybe all remote testimony. We manage each call. Each person calling in, and the order that they call in is put into a queue, or the first in line will be the first call we handle, and then we proceed with the second, third, and so on. Some considerations for the board to think about this option is it's simple and quick to deploy. We have the capability already using Facebook Live and our telephone system, which is a Cisco system. Prior to the meeting, we can still receive a written testimony via letter or email. And during the meeting, for Haiku Stairs, what we can do is set it up so that voice testimony, email testimony can be received maybe during the meeting. We'd have to have somebody watching the email traffic coming in, and that can be shared and coordinated during the time of the meeting. We're going to have to evaluate in-person testimony in light of the mayor's order that was issued yesterday. And I think that's some of the things we see in this option. We think this option is probably something we can do pretty quickly. I would suggest that the meeting physically, we were looking at the meeting being held in Kaneohe, closest to the community that is impacted by haiku stairs. They live in that community. But because we can do this remotely, the best place to hold that meeting was actually here in this room, because we have the IT infrastructure already here, and phone systems that we can leverage to allow for public participation. People can provide testimony from their homes, either through a computer, internet connection, or just using the regular old telephone. So this is one option. Next is to explore using some tools like we have Webex capability already. And we use that for video conferencing for meetings that we hold within our staff and with contractors or consultants abroad, and with other city agencies, even the mayor's office. It would allow the public remote viewing. We use these tools for web-based meetings right now, but in a public hearing type of situation using these tools, there's something kind of moderated participation. That's something we haven't really had some experience doing, so we'd have to investigate that to ensure that our order of speaking is maintained and it doesn't devolve into chaos. But we can investigate that. The public will still be able to call in via telephone to provide testimony. We manage each call like we're doing today. So some things for consideration is basically at this point in time, we don't have the experience on using these types of tools for like a public hearing or public meeting where there's a lot of public testimony that's received. We can also receive written testimony before the meeting. During the meeting, only in person if it's still allowed, and video voice testimony can be accepted. Email testimony may be accepted maybe perhaps during the meeting only, and it would need to be managed and coordinated. And that's basically, those are basically the two options that we're looking at right now. And I am available for any questions or suggestions.
Members, any questions?
Yeah, I do. It's more for our attorney. Do we have to have given that we've done an EIS and we've had it available for comment, both in draft form and in draft form, do we need to have this public meeting? Do we need
That's up to the board. You guys can have it later. You can do it virtually. You can not have it at all. It's completely up to the board. If you guys want to postpone it to when we're in a little bit more of a normal.
No, I don't. I'm more curious to know. I mean, we obviously are holding it because we want to provide the public an additional opportunity to comment, but it's not required by law.
No.
Okay. Second question is, do we expect, Ernie or Chair, is it your expectation that we would take a vote that day that we receive comment, or would we be doing it at a subsequent meeting?
Remember, soon that would be up to the board how they would like to proceed. My suggestion would be to hold this public hearing first, and then at a separate date in the future, actually hold a public meeting and allow for public testimony also during that meeting, since it's a public meeting.
So you're going to have two opportunities for the public to comment.
Yeah. And it's really entirely up to the feelings of the board how they want to proceed. That would be just my recommendation. Haiku stairs is such a high visibility and important issue for the community on all sides.
I think the last time we talked about this, we talked about having a hearing separate from our regular board meeting, at which time we will vote on that. I think that's what we were discussing last time.
I realized we're going to have lots of testimony, and I was just trying to avoid having it duplicated.
One thing to keep.
You mean have it one time?
Yeah, just have it one time and vote that day.
One thing to keep in mind, the public hearing that we were proposing originally to do at, say, Benjamin Parker Elementary School in Kaneohe. It would have been held from 6 to maybe 9 or 9:30 at night. So more convenient time after people had finished their work, got home, and were able to get down to the location. The board meetings are still, right now, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday after working day.
Sure.
So it's the issue of accessibility, whether virtually or in person.
No, I appreciate that we continue to meet, that we haven't stopped business. After all, the water got to keep running, the pipes any leaks have to be repaired. We're an ongoing business that we have to be. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate that we're having meetings. I'm just trying to be efficient as much as possible.
I think perhaps because as we had previously discussed, besides the technology component, which is huge, and going virtual, I don't think anything has changed in my mind. I mean, we'll still have an opportunity, at least one, the public hearing, for the public to participate. And we encourage participation, and arguably there's even more opportunity now to participate because you can do it, there's so many different options to do it virtually. And then at the next board meeting, we can take action. And I realize it's a public meeting and we can't stop anyone from providing testimony at that point. But at that point, I think we can, when we send out the notice of the public hearing, we can let them know that that's the time to provide comment, and anything that comes in later may or may not be considered. But there will at least be one chance for public input. If that's in accordance with what the board.
If it's on the agenda for any board meeting, you have to have testimony. You have to accept testimony.
So they could also testify at the regular board meeting on that agenda.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, to the extent you want to avoid the same people saying the same thing, I think that would be wise. But if you put something on the agenda, you have to be able to accept public testimony.
Perhaps then, if that's the case, maybe we just have one board meeting and.
Well, in light of what's going on now, I think we're you're going to get the same people testifying twice. First of all, if you have two. So in light of what's happening now, I think all the effort to go into making whatever, Webex or whatever, you do it one time. So you don't have to duplicate. Because basically that's what we're going to have to do is duplicate it.
Yeah.
So, duplicate setting it up for Webex today and then Webex the next day when we vote, since we have to allow testimony. So I agree with Ray, we just combine it and you set up everything one time and be done with it. And if we have to dedicate one of our meetings, our board meetings to that, then so be it. But, we got to get this thing put to bed already. I mean, it's been lingering for.
If I could make a suggestion, if we hold only one meeting, the issue, I think it would be better if maybe the board would consider holding the meeting instead of 2 o'clock in the afternoon, hold it at 6 o'clock in the evening on Monday instead of 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Sure.
It'll be easier for the working people to be able to come home and.
Personally, I have no problem with that, but the main thing is we do it one time and.
If the board members are willing to do that.
Because having been to the one in Kaneohe that
you were there.
I was there. Yes, I'm pretty sure with all the the emotions that were displayed that night, you're going to get people to kind of come to if you have two meetings, they're going to come to both. So. You hear them once, you hear them 10 times already. So I have no problem personally with a 6 o'clock meeting.
And I know that we have some board members that are participating in this meeting remotely. Well, some of our challenges, if all board members participate remotely, is that you'll have a tiny picture on that screen of your face, and then the public see, looking at through Facebook Live would see maybe an empty table with small photos of people on the screen. So I might suggest that at least a few board members try to be around this table for that discussion.
I'll be here. Yeah, but I did want to ask Kapua for her perspective, because she's a community advocate. And so I wanted to, if she were here, I would have turned to ask her what she thought.
She is here virtually.
Yeah.
And so, sorry, I started to speak earlier, but realized I had muted myself, so it was not very helpful. But I agree. I think it would be fine to have one meeting. I mean, I think given the situation that we're facing here in Hawaii, in all of our counties, not just on Oahu, I mean, I think many people are focused on many different things, including kind of day-to-day safety and family and survival. And so you know, and the situation is changing rapidly. So I think being sensitive to that, I think it would be, if we had one meeting, but I think what might be helpful, I do agree with Ernie that it would be helpful to have it in the evening, and I'm happy to be available at 6 o'clock in the evening virtually, as I may still be on Kauai depending. But either way, I think it might also be helpful to make clear that if people want to submit testimony on the issue, that we're happy to accept that testimony through a certain date, whether that ends whether that ends at the meeting. I guess it depends on whether or not, whether we're going to vote at that meeting or we will vote at the next meeting. But I would recommend that testimony be held open so that people can continue to submit written testimony at least until we're prepared for that.
So I think if I read everything correctly, I think we're leaning to have one board meeting at which public testimony will be accepted and a decision will be made at that same board meeting.
I don't think that's what she's saying. She's saying that have the hearing, open the meeting, and then allow for written in testimony. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
See, to clarify, if we're going to vote, if as Brian suggested, we're going to vote at that meeting, I think that we should notice it as soon as possible so that people can start to submit testimony, whenever they'd like. And then we can close it and vote at the time of the meeting. But I just want to make sure that people have as much time as possible to be able to share them out on this issue, because people do have very, strong opinions, but we also need to be able to make a decision and move forward.
Yeah, so I would echo what Vice Chair Stroke has, indicated. Let's give the public as much time as possible for them to provide testimony. So I'm looking at our April board meeting. If we notice it soon hereafter, assuming we can get a time, it sounds like we can get a time, and then have that much time for testimony, and then we can have the April board meeting and then make a decision at that meeting.
Question then on follow-up question on the submitting testimony. If, say, for instance, if we had say tomorrow at 6 o'clock, would it be, the deadline would be what, 24 hours before, or what are you suggesting? Sounds like you want to have it open all the way until we have the meeting.
Right.
Just to clarify.
Right, I'm not sure I heard you because somebody left the meeting partway through. And so it was saying a participant has left the meeting. So could you repeat your question?
Okay, my question is, if we have, say, for instance, we're going to have the meeting or the hearing tomorrow at 6 o'clock. What is there a deadline that you're proposing, say 24 hours before, or is the deadline going to be at 6 o'clock at the time of the meeting? Is my question. I just want to clarify. You're leaving it open for submitting or when you submit written testimony.
Right, sorry I wasn't clear on that. Because I wasn't sure that we were looking at having a meeting and then deciding at the meeting. If that is what we're doing, which I'm in favor of, say we're gonna notice for April and then take testimony and vote on it. I think that people have to submit testimony by the close of the meeting because we're gonna be voting. But my point was to try and publicize that we're having the meeting and make clear, give the public as much opportunity as possible to be able to participate, whether that's, during the actual meeting or hearing itself, or whether that's just by sending in written testimony. And so I think in addition to our usual posting, perhaps if we could have a section of our website dedicated to this and where people could easily submit testimony and maybe even post information in the community in Kaneohe, so that people, are just aware of their opportunity. Then we can close the time for testimony at the hearing and we can vote in April.
Well, yeah, my concern is, what I'm leading up to is that if the written testimony is, deadline is close of the meeting, when do we will have time, say for instance, if we have like 200 written testimonies submitted at the close of the meeting? So that's what I'm just saying, is that otherwise it doesn't look good if we accept the testimony until the close of the meeting and then, vote on it right after we have 200 testimony. Are we gonna have time to read the 200 testimonies? So all I'm trying to say is that maybe if we moved it up to, deadline before the meeting, at least during the meeting, we could peruse through the written testimony. Otherwise, if we're not able to look at it, then, it might not look too good.
If I can interject really quickly, you have to take testimony through the course of the meeting, and it can't stop. So you could probably just get this information that you have the 24 hours. Like, you can get the testimony on a rolling basis, but you can't cut off testimony until the meeting, until it's done, until the testimony is stopped.
No, I understand that. With a verbal testimony, it's easy to jot down notes. What I'm talking about is people that don't get up to testify verbally, submit a written testimony, and then we're supposed to read it. At the end of the meeting, we'd be spending another hour or 2 hours just reading through the testimony before we get to discussion. That's all my point. I just want to make that point, logistically, how we would do this. That's I'm trying to get to that.
I'm not sure if you're waiting for my response, but if someone submits written testimony during the meeting when people are testifying orally, then you have to accept it. So there's not really a cutoff time for written testimony. So if you need an hour after the testimony is done to look at all, then take that hour.
And Max, just to respond to that as well, that was my reason for holding it up until the end of the meeting, is because legally we can't do that. But what we could include in those is a strong recommendation that people give us at least 24 hours to ensure that the board members can consider and review the written testimony. I mean, these are new times and new, this will be our first public hearing, virtual public hearing. And so I think we'll all just have to be, as flexible and as patient as we can. And I really appreciate your concern about wanting to make sure that we can consider all of the feedback that's been provided. And I think a good way to do that would be to make a recommendation that people submit at least 24 hours ahead of time.
Luana, this is Ernie. I have a question. The state legislature sometimes holds like a kind of a public hearing on a proposed bill. And they allow for testimony to be submitted ahead of time. And sometimes people submit testimony late, but they still take it in. And sometimes they actually break. They don't make a decision at that meeting. That would call for 2 meetings. Then a future meeting set for decision making, only no public testimony received.
Sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you, but what I think think you are asking is whether or not you want to take late testimony. And if the board makes a decision after receiving all the testimony, then the matter is concluded.
No, the late testimony will be taken during the meeting. That maybe it doesn't get submitted ahead of time before the meeting. But, board, perhaps this is something that I can work with the Corporation Counsel's Office to determine what is a legally acceptable process.
Yeah, otherwise I generally agree with Paula with her with regard to what you put in the notice so that written testimony does come in so the board does have adequate time to review it. Obviously that's ideal.
Yeah, I think we could take into consideration all of the different comments that were made, and we can put something together that will address the different concerns. I'm even thinking of, taking all the testimony that comes in, and making sure we consider it, maybe either take an hour recess and then come back on the record to deliberate and make the decision even.
During that same night.
That same night, so just be prepared for a late board meeting.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we got the logistics figured out here. So we don't, we cross all our T's, dot all I's. That's all. Thank you.
Well taken, everybody. I want to make sure that we include, because I know it's much harder when you're participating virtually. I want to make sure we include members Utai and Matsui. Did you folks have any input?
They went to sleep.
Okay, hearing none. Is there anything else on this matter? Okay, if not, it was an item for information, so I'm just going to move on to the next item.
Yeah, so just, Chair, before you move on, I just want to clarify so I'm clear on the direction we're heading. We're looking at actually one meeting, and a meeting at the date of the April regular board meeting. The meeting would be scheduled in the evening to start maybe at 6 o'clock in the evening as opposed to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we would go as long as we necessary to receive testimony. And then if there's a lot of late testimony received, written testimony or emails during the meeting, we would allow the board members to recess to consider, to review those testimony provided during the meeting, and then reconvene on recess and the board making a decision on the future for listeners.
That sounds right, unless anybody wants to chime in and add anything.
I guess to the extent you cannot have anything else on the agenda, but just that would probably be wise, if at all possible.
I think except maybe approval of minutes for this meeting and this as the only action item on the agenda and only informational item for April.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? Anything further? If not, I do want to thank Manager Lau for taking the lead on this. I know it was a very fluid situation and things kept changing and will likely continue to change. So thanks for being adaptable and putting together this presentation with respect to the technology to be used for future meetings.
Thank you, board chair and members. Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 2 is the results of the sale of the Board of Water Supply Water System Revenue Bonds, Series 2020A and Series 2020B. The chair recognizes Mr. Joe Cooper, and we do have a couple of guests remotely. If you would please introduce them.
Good afternoon, Board Chair, Board members. This on the line, I think we also have Frank Luttenberg and Craig Duesenberger of the Bank of America Securities. I'll start by just giving a brief summary. Pursuant to Board Resolution 908, 2020, which authorized issues of water bonds, we sold a total of $106,635,000 principal amount of 2020 A and B water bonds. These will actually be dated on this coming Wednesday, March 25th. So they were priced and sold around the 10th or 11th, and we'll be closing tomorrow and on the 25th. The proceeds from these bonds will be used to pay for water system improvements, the cost to issue the bonds, and to fund a trust fund to refund some of our older water system bonds from 2012 and 2014. These bonds were rated AAA by S&P Global Ratings, which is the highest rating I think municipal issue has gotten in the state of Hawaii, and AA+ by Fitch Ratings. The true interest cost was 2.65%, and they were sold as a premium of $6.5 million. Well, by refunding the bonds, we will save present value of $5,200,000. So with that, I will turn it over to Frank and Craig to walk through the slides, and I'll try to advance the slides as you move forward. Go ahead, Frank.
Great, and I'm not sure if Frank had a chance to join. I know he was having some technical difficulties dialing in.
He was. We just lost him.
Okay, no worries. We can start, and then if he joins, that's great. Well, hi everybody. Sorry I couldn't join you in person. I will say that we've been in shelter in place here in California for about a week now. So let's just say I was excited to put on my Aloha shirt today and get dressed for work. I didn't think I'd be using these for a while. But, and I know there's not a lot of good news these days, but your deal is absolutely fantastic news. And you were able to get into the market just before things really got bad. And just to give you a point of reference, we were in the market the last day before both the municipal market and the corporate market shut down altogether. And we'll show you a couple of graphs here as we get further along, but interest rates have actually risen almost 200 basis points, which is about 2 full percentage points since you locked in the interest rates on these bonds. And so I would say that your timing was definitely impeccable. And so Joe, I don't know if you want to maybe navigate to the first slide.
Okay, I'm on the first slide now, the summary.
Okay, great. And this is just an overview of bonds in general for those that aren't familiar with the product. So and what you typically sell are municipal bonds, and those are sold by local governments to fund infrastructure projects, so anywhere from transit systems to airports and seaports, all the way to utilities such as power or water and sewer. And there's really two types of bonds that are the primary types that are offered by municipalities, and those are general obligation bonds. So that's what the the cities and the counties typically issue to fund general projects, and then there's also general obligation bonds issued by the state to fund mostly Department of Education, and also some of that funding goes to UH. And the other primary type of bonds that we see are revenue bonds, and so those, instead of being secured by the general fund of the city or county, they're secured by a specific revenue stream. So in the instance of your bonds, those are secured by the water system revenues. And so the way the bonds are structured, it's similar to a mortgage. So in this instance, most of the bonds were amortized over 30 years, and you pay principal and interest over those 30 years, and then at the end of 30 years, the bonds are extinguished. So very similar to the way mortgage is structured, and your payment is really determined by your interest rate. So that's why Joe had mentioned that true interest cost of 2.6%. That's a very low rate that you get for those 30-year bonds, and so that's why your debt service payment is going to be very affordable. And so we have been seeing a trend also, I would say, in addition to the traditional tax-exempt bonds that are issued by municipalities, we are seeing a trend towards taxable bonds as well. So the interest rate on those is a little bit higher, but it does give issuers both private activity relief for the use of proceeds, and then also you're allowed to do refinancings, which were extinguished under the tax reform in 2017. So that's kind of just a general overview of bonds. Joe, if you don't mind flipping to the next page, we can go over the transaction. Okay. I know, thanks, Joe. I know Joe had mentioned a number of this already, so you get the highest possible rating for Standard & Poor's AAA. So you're the first true unique AAA within the state, which is fantastic. You get the next highest rating by Fitch, AA plus. And I think those ratings are really reflective of all the financial management that the board has been doing over the years, the rate increases, the debt service coverage, as well as the cash balances. And so those go into all the ratings. And then, Joe, I know you had mentioned some use of proceeds. This deal was bifurcated into two series. So the tax-exempt series, that's going to fund the new projects, the repair and maintenance of the system. And then the taxable series, that's going to be used for the refunding of some outstanding bonds. And so we'll go through some of the savings numbers in a minute. But again, an interest rate of 2.65% was actually your lowest cost of funding ever for a bond deal if you go look back over the past 20 years. And then the refunding savings, you're going to get about $5.2 million on a present value basis for the savings component. And then we did end up placing a number of the bonds with local institutions. So we did some marketing to local retail investors, that's individual people. And then we also ended up placing a number of the bonds with Bank of Hawaii and First Hawaiian Bank, which is nice to keep some of those bonds locally. And then if you look at the graph on the bottom of this page, it really shows you where you end up locking in the interest rate. So we show the blue line are actually tax exempt rates and the green line are the taxable rates. And you can see we locked in very close to the all-time low, and right before interest rates actually increased dramatically. And then, Joe, if you don't mind flipping to the next page, 3. Okay. This actually shows it in more dramatic fashion. And this graph is actually dated at this point because last week interest rates went up even more. So it went up about a percentage point in the few days after we priced the deal, and then a full percentage point last week. So I would say it was a very difficult pricing in terms of the number of orders we received were a little bit lighter on the tax exempt side. On the taxable, we ended up getting some more orders. But I thought, sitting there with Ernie and Joe, they both did a great job saying, hey, we may not have hit the all-time low on this graph, but we think we need to lock in rates now before rates go up higher, and that's exactly what happened. So kudos to Ernie and Joe for making that decision to price the bonds on that date. And then on page 4, these are some of the statistics we've been talking about, and here you can see the 2020 A bonds and the 2020 B bonds. And the A bonds, that first column, these are the new money bonds, as we call them, for new projects. So that's going to generate about $65 million for new projects. Again, amortized over those 30 years with an all-in true interest cost of 2.66%. And then over the course of those 30 years, you end up paying about $94 million in total payments, including the interest on those bonds. And then the 2020 B bonds, that's the refunding series. So that's taxable interest rate, but that does allow you to refund some of the 2012 A bonds that were outstanding for about $5.2 million of present value savings. And then one metric that we often use is a percentage of refund part. And so you can see that in the gold row, the second gold row, PV savings percentage. And so the PV percentage on this deal is 12%. So it's just a point of reference. The state's debt policy, their minimum is 5% present value savings. So you're more than double the typical present value savings for advanced refunding. So With that, I'll pause to see if there's any questions on the structuring side.
Any questions?
Members, any questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Great. And then slide 5, so this is a visual of the bonds that were sold and the different installments in each year. So the blue bars are that 2028, the new money, 30-year debt service, and then the green, that's refunding. And the reason that's so much shorter is it's refunding an older series of bonds. So they were 30-year, issued at 30-year at the time, and now they're shorter later on. And so we did have a fair amount of bonds to sell in that 2025 to 2033 range, but that's also the range where individual retail likes to buy. So we did some of those orders, and it was also where we saw Bank of Hawaii and First Hawaii Bank place some of their orders. And then on slide 5 here, we've got some visuals for, we did some local advertising ahead of the bond sale to increase local demand. And so on the left, we've got print advertising that was in the advertisements in the neighborhood papers. And then on the right, we've got the digital version of that, which was in the same papers and also the Wall Street Journal. So we find that these are helpful, and especially when we've got a tax exempt component, which retail tends to like to market to those. So these are ones that we ran just the week ahead of the bond sale. And this is kind of interesting. So we also did an institutional investor presentation that was viewed by a number of institutions that are listed here on the left. And a number of these institutions already pulled your bonds. And then you can see of those that viewed the presentation, the ones highlighted in blue actually ended up placing orders for the bond deal. So BlackRock is one, one of the largest investors in terms of bond funds in the country. First Hawaiian Bank, who we actually met with, and we also met with Bank of Hawaii and Goldman Sachs, and purchasing some of the bonds. And then the last page, this shows the distributions for where the bonds were actually placed. So on the left side, the tax exempt bonds, a lot of those went to bond funds, which particularly like those longer 30-year maturities. We did get some insurance companies which bought in the intermediate range, as well as some bank trusts. And then we did subsequent to finishing this presentation was people delivered directly First Hawaiian Bank, some First Hawaiian Bank of Hawaii orders that came in. And then the underwritten amount. So because I mentioned earlier, the tax exempt bonds, some of the maturities were not fully subscribed for. So we ended up underwriting those on our balance sheet, both ourselves, BWS and Steeple, just to lock in the final pricing. And then we still have some of those bonds on balance sheet. We're working those off over time. And then on the right side, it shows the distribution of the taxable bonds. And so a little bit of a different breakout here. The bond fund's not as big of a buyer. We still have insurance companies that bought a decent portion, and then a decent amount of investment advisors, and also bank trusts. And did see some individual retail coming on the taxable side. So I would say, on both of these, a good diverse mix of investors, good viable investors. Didn't see any debt investors that we think would be trying to flip the bonds, or any arbitrage funds or hedge funds, which is always a good sign that you want to see, typically what we call viable investors for your bonds. So I would say, to recap, rate timing, interest rates rose dramatically from when you issued yours, and then, we're at the point where, the Fed may actually have to step in and start to buy some municipal bonds in order to reopen our market because it's been closed for the last 2 weeks.
Wow.
Okay. Thank you, Craig. Are there any questions from board members? Comments?
Any comments or questions?
I just want to recognize the great work that Joe Cooper, our waterworks controller, did, and the staff here at the Board of Water Supply and the other divisions that supported us in updating our preliminary offerings statement, POS, and getting this deal done. And also the good work of Bank of America Securities, BFOA Securities, and also Stifel Nichols. In doing the work. Frank and Craig did an excellent job. Our bond counsel, Oric, was also very good at getting documents and issuing opinions that we needed. And we appreciate the support of CORE, Jessica Wong, and the efforts, and Kaliko, the treasurer at the city, for budget and fiscal services, Nelson Koyanagi and his team there, for all the support in making this happen. We just went in there at the right moment, and the moment just closed after we made the sale. So thank you, everybody, for your hard work.
Thank you. Congratulations, and thank you for including us as part of the team.
I just want to say that we were totally blown away by the AAA rating from S&P. We've worked for years trying to get a AAA. And thanks to the good work of the board also in supporting not only the rate increases, but supporting the planning efforts to get the plans and different efforts in place. S&P was really impressed with what we've done as a team here at the Board of Water Supply.
No, it's a partnership, always a partnership. So thank you very much to the department, of course, fellow board members working all together to have such a solid record to be able to achieve that rating.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Frank and Craig, for joining us today, and be safe out there.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you. Stay safe, everybody. Talk to you soon.
Okay, aloha.
All right, we're going to move on now to the next item for information. Item number 3 is the status update of groundwater levels at all indexations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members.
Very Sibao.
So this month there were 2 aquifer index wells in low groundwater status, which for February, Honolulu and Wailua, and they are under the first level caution. And the reason for that, let me get to let me read this first. We did a geodetic benchmark elevation survey for all our monitor wells, and that was completed in January of 2020. And the elevations were adjusted, which caused a decrease in head levels in Honolulu and Wailua. And I'll show you that in a moment. The benchmark decrease in Wailua was large enough to place the Wailua in caution status. It's just like 1/10 of a foot. And with no significant change in pumping levels in the adjacent wells. The decrease in head levels in Honolulu is somewhat attributable to low rainfall in Windward, and I'll show you a bit about that. So, but the pumpage was 127 million gallons per day, which is typically low for this time of year. So, with no major increase in pumping, the head levels are dropping. So, the only thing that is explainable there is rainfall. This is Honolulu. You can see that it's, in fact, this drop here is basically it's almost a 1/2 foot of difference in the elevation. So that's what this drop here is. And normally, Honolulu would, Honolulu would track with Kaluanui, but right in this area, you can see it's pretty much tracking Kaluanui because they're very close to each other. Just in this one tail end, it's dropping where Kaluanui is flattening out. So that's a little bit curious. In Wailua, you can see this drop is approximately 3/10 of a foot more, so it's dropping into that status. when I look at the rainfall for Oahu, it's still above normal, but this is the Honolulu Watershed. And I want to point this out is that we don't have rain gauges around the entire island. We don't have that many in Windward. In fact, this is just Honolulu. So in this October, November, December timeframe, there was some more rainfall, and pumping was a little higher at that time. If you look at Waihee Tunnel, it does show a dip in the pressure behind the bulkhead in that same time frame. So demand on Windward was actually a little bit higher in that time frame. And so that contributed, I think, to the lower head levels in Honolulu. As far as island-wide though, we're right below the five-year monthly average, which is right in this point here. So pumping is fairly low, but and the last point is that to call a low groundwater condition, we need 3 index wells in alert or critical. So this is only 2 and they're in caution. So it's meant to just monitor and continue to do that. We'll look at the pumping at Honolulu. And by the way, Honolulu is actually pumping now about half of its permitted use. So when you're pumping half and the head levels are dropping, that tells me that rainfall is being affected. But we don't have rain gauges in Honolulu, so it's just an assumption. And we're still looking at above normal rainfall through May. This is from the National Weather Service. With that, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Members, any questions?
I have a question. Barry, I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on whether the mayor's work at home, stay at home order will have an impact on this going forward over the next month. And I'm thinking of the wells that are in caution status in particular, or with more people staying at home during the day, will have greater demand for. I'm just curious.
That is an excellent question.
Kapoa, we'll find out.
Yeah.
You know, I expect pumpage to actually go down. Large part of the big demand is in Waikiki, and the tourism is down. No tourists are coming here, so I expect Waikiki's demand to go down. People will use water wherever they are, so it's just a matter of redistribution from their workplace to their home. But it'll be interesting to see what effect it would have on the island-wide pumping. But when the economy goes down, I expect water.
Just to be clear, I'm hopeful that the overall number will stay the same or go down if we have a significant decrease in tourists, but I'm wondering in particular about Honolulu and Waialua, because more people may be kind of home instead of working from home instead of going elsewhere.
Yeah, that's true. Windward is sort of a bit of a community. They work in town, they work elsewhere, so now they all back home. So yeah, thank you for that.
Good question. We'll monitor it and report back to the board if we see a trend. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Barry, we've talked about Honolulu over the time I've been here. It's always been kind of on the edge. Why don't we have a rain gauge there?
There are, but we don't, it doesn't fold into this particular report. They're National Weather Service. So we did do a search of rainfall there. There is no index but for those rainfalls. So we had to estimate it. I mean, it's not that it's raining, but not. That's the only other reason. I cannot explain why it's actually dropping like that. Because usually pumping or rainfall are the two big knobs that you turn that affect water levels. Because our pumping was high in the fall of last year, but then it dropped for the last 2-3 months. You'd expect the water levels to go up. So yeah, we would have to add that those private gauges in Honolulu to this. But historically, the Honolulu Watershed rain is usually indicative of the island. But we are in microclimates and stuff, so I think for this particular
Something to look at more closely in the future for Honolulu.
Yeah.
And maybe Wailua too.
Yeah, in Wailua, there's a thick aquifer. We looked to see if any of the old plantation wells started pumping up again, but they have not been. So that is just mostly the geodetic survey increase. It's not really the pumping.
The geodetic survey decreases, the benchmark elevations for top of casing was resurveyed at a more accurate way by the U.S. Geodetic Survey. Was it like a level 2 survey or something?
I think so, yeah.
And because the original top of casing benchmark elevations may have been set many years ago, but now the Geodetic Survey did a much more accurate determination. They end up lowering the benchmark top of casing elevation.
Like 0.3 feet.
0.3 of a foot.
Yeah, Honolulu was almost half a foot.
That's a pretty big change. And it doesn't mean that the water level just suddenly dropped, but how we measure the water level, the reference elevation was decreased.
Correct. That's why going forward, it'll be correct, but how it relates to the actual groundwater levels established is going to change a bit for these two. It concerns me that it's close to alert, but it doesn't really seem. We're only pumping 2 million gallons a day in Honolulu 2, and Honolulu 3 is not even pumping, so it's hard for me to explain that. But we'll monitor it, and I'll come up with some other reason. But yeah, we're investigating.
These are good questions, though. Good questions.
We certainly don't want it to reach critical, because then we end up having, that's when it starts to detrimentally affect the resource. So at this level, it's getting our attention, but it's not necessarily that serious yet.
Okay, we'll continue to investigate and see if there's any adjustments we have to do. Okay. Any more questions, members? Okay, if not, moving on, I'm glad people can't afford water.
Yeah. But he can, water.
That's what it is if the governor decided to lock them.
Thanks, Barry. I thought it was going to be tomorrow, maybe, or maybe today.
How long is it getting up?
Okay.
Yeah, last item for information is the water main repair report for February 2020. Chair recognizes Mr. Jason Nikaido.
Good afternoon, Chair and fellow board members. My name is Jason Nikaido. I'm the Assistant Program Administrator for Field Operations. And I'm here to give the water main repair report for February 2020. So as of February of this year, we had a total of 247 main breaks. In comparison to the previous year, at this time, there were 210. We surveyed 20 miles of pipeline for leak detection, and our average repair took about 16 to 18 hours, which is comparable to the previous months. Any questions?
One thing to notice that for the month of February, it was 22 main breaks for the month of February.
Yes.
Which was lower than the previous month of 28 main breaks. So February looked like a better month for us.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mike sent you on an easy one. Members, any questions? Okay, you hearing that? Thank you for the report. That brings us to the end of the regular agenda. Can I get a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. All right, we stand in recess as we disconnect some of this technology.
Yeah, Kapua, stay on the line, Kay and Jade. We're going to disconnect the Facebook Live.
Actually, I forgot to put in the record earlier that no one showed up to testify, whether by phone or, so if we can include that in the minutes.
Moana, we don't need to, does the chair need to open the meeting again, or?
No.
Okay, good, thank you. And Jeff, are you on the line? Jeff Lau? Okay, he's not on the line.
So we're gonna close the public line so that they don't.
That's actually a good point. We're gonna, we'll end that.
That's a good point.
Sure.
Keep me on the line if you don't mind.